Hi everyone. I hope everyone has had an excellent week. I have had an interesting one. I'm in the middle of house hunting. My rent has gone up significantly and I cannot afford that. So we're on the move. So you'll be seeing a totally different background soon, hopefully. And hopefully the new set of clothing. I've worn this a couple of times doing this. So, this week's going to be interesting. We've got the tea on what is happening with Christian Porter now. We have what kind of person would he represent in his personal business? And did he start a law firm? All of that and more that we're going to discuss tonight. So, please sit back, get a nice drink, and hopefully you will enjoy the show. Okay, let's start off where we normally do. So, Porter lost a very, very important case this week. Now, if you didn't see it, let's go through that. So, he decided to sue, and as usual, when they're doing it, they get involved in nefarious ways of doing these sorts of things. And not only did he lose, he lost in such a big way that he will now have to lose a lot of money to do so. So, former Attorney General had appealed court decision to stop Sue Chrysanthemou representing him despite dropping his claim against the ABC. Okay, former Attorney General Christian Porter has lost his appeal against federal court decision which blocked his barrister from acting now in an abandoned defamation case against the ABC. Now, you would think at this point you would be like, yeah, okay, I'm going to stop, all of this stuff and stop trying to dip my hands into what is definitely a very dodgy situation. But no, he wasn't done. In a decision likely to cost Porter hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal costs, the full bench of the federal court ruled on Thursday that Justice Tom Thorley was right to bar the high-profile barrister Sue Chrysanthemou SC from the acting in the case against the ABC. Thorley ruled in May last year that Chrysanthemou could not act as the former Attorney General because she held confidential information that was relevant to the case and could present a danger of misuse. Days later, Porter discontinued his case against the national broadcaster. The original case was brought by Joe Dwyer, a friend of the woman who accused Porter of raping her 30 years ago, which Porter strongly denies. Dyer alleged during a meeting between the two women in November 2020, which related to a separate matter, the lawyer was given confidential information about Porter's defamation case to the ABC. In January, she was awarded more than $400,000 in costs over the case. Porter launched an appeal to the full bench of the federal court, disputing the ruling, arguing amongst other things that the barrister was not in possession of the confidential information. During the appeal, Barrister Brett Walker SC argued that the case had been brought by Dyer because the amnesty towards the former Attorney General. She wishes him ill, Walker said of Dyer's attitude towards Porter during the hearing in April, arguing information given to Prince Anthony was not substantially confidential. He argued that it would not have been possible for Chris Anthony to turn down the brief on the basis that it would have been awkward. One looks in vain at the rules for any out of council. That would be embarrassing to have to take the brief, he said at one time. But the court disagreed on Thursday, and Justice Amy Bescano handed down the ruling during a brief hearing in federal court, saying all three justices who heard the case had agreed to dismiss the majority appeal. Now, he was forced to pay court costs and everything else in relation to this. He's going to lose a lot of money and no longer being part of the government, so he can't wield government money for this. I don't know Porter's financial position, but I think we're going to get a better understanding of that in the next article that we talk about Porter. So, let's get to the part that really was. In a statement after the decision, Dyer, who ran unsuccessfully for a federal parliament in May, thanked her lawyers and paid tribute to the woman at the centre of the original allegations. It has been 2 years since Kate's tragic death, she said. With the litigation and Mr. Porter's career now over, it's in our fervent wish that Kate can be remembered, not for what was alleged to have been done to her, nor the trauma that flowed from it, but the brilliant, passionate, creative daughter, sister, partner, and friend that she was. Okay, so that is what he lost. But what's he doing now? Christian Porter has now brought himself up in what is extraordinarily the dumbest move if he ever wants to end up back in politics. Now, this is so interesting. I wondered, what would Christian Porter be doing now? Why would that be important? Oh, yeah, it means something. You know how I've always said the LNP are pretty freaking criminal? I've always said this. I've always thought, they've always had these shady underworld ties, and straight out from the gate, what do? But they're not just a little bit mob tied. They've always sort of taken money from these weird underworld sort of moments and then wondered why. Hey, I wonder what the connection is. Well, if you've ever watched Underbelly, but like in the beginning stages of it, you would know who Mick Gatto is. And if you live in Melbourne, you definitely know who this idiot is. And, I mean, he's famous for doing a bunch of stunts and just an underworld figure of the worst proportion. Okay, Christian Porter acting for Mick Gatto in a High Court appeal over the ABC defamation case. So he's not done with the ABC. So this does two things in one for him. Pardon me. He gets to go back to the base of being the underworld sort of dude again that gets to rub shoulders with this sort of people. And he has an axe to grind at the ABC. So this is like a twofer. I'm not done playing with you. Why would I do that? Turns out he's not done. Former Attorney General who discontinued his own defamation against the ABC last year among the underworld figures' legal representation. Sorry. Okay. The former Attorney General Christian Porter is acting for the underworld figure Mick Gatto in a bid for a High Court appeal in a defamation case against the ABC. You can see a theme here. So the LNP have this real crimey sort of weirdness going on, and then you're like, how close to the sun can you fly? And then they're like, no, we're going to get as close as possible and hopefully no one's going to notice. Because why would too many people be interested in what happens to them afterwards? It's like how they always seem to get these lucrative jobs like in New York or just positions that they shouldn't have. Or like in a submarine contract, I'm looking at you, uh, Mr. Fixer. Uh, what's his name? Chris. Oh, it's been too long. Anyway, uh, so they've all got jobs like this, and they're all dodgy. I will think of his name a little bit later. Gatto sued the public, Chris Pine, knew it hit me. Gatto sued the public broadcaster and reporters Nino Bucci, who now works for The Guardian Australia, and Sarah Farnsworth, over an article he says falsely accused him of threatening to kill the gangland lawyer and police informant Nicola Gobbo. Now, Nick Gatto has openly shot someone in the middle of like public. If you don't know that Mick Gatto is like the dude to kill people, well, take a look at his amazing history. He has gotten away with murder before. So it's not unlike it. And if you don't know that Nicola Gobbo, her story is basically this. She's a woman who stole off the underworld loads and loads and loads of money. And there was a score to be settled. And when it came to light exactly what her role was, there were talks that she was going to get taken care of. Turns out, yeah, it's entirely possible. The Victoria Supreme Court rejected Gatto's claim that the article implied that he is a hitman and a murderer, prompting an unsuccessful appeal to the Victorian Court of Appeal on whether it conveyed the meaning threatening to kill Gobbo. Okay, imagine having this as like your guy. Imagine going, no, I'm going to get the former Attorney General involved. You know, I'm going to wield that kind of power. And this kindness is like the ridiculousness of and the power connections of Mick Gatto. I think that's quite clear when we have a look at the amount of sway that he has. In May, Gatto applied to the High Court for special leave to appeal the decision. According to submissions dated May 11 filed with the court, seen by Guardian Australia, he is represented by barristers Guy Reynolds, Porter and Daniel Ward. See, and it's interesting that Christian Porter is doing this now. I mean, you would think that you'd want to clean up your image. You've got a rape allegation. You've got part of this terrible party that had all these rorts and scams. No. But then you start your own law firm. And who's one of your first clients? I don't know, an underworld guy. This does nothing to clean up his image. See me, I'm all about this doesn't look great. This is not going to be good at all. But I suppose underworld money is a lot. So now that he's up the creek without a paddle on the whole other ABC thing, he might be a little bit low on funds. Barristers in Australia subject to the cab rank rule, meaning they are prohibited from rejecting a case except in limited circumstances, guaranteeing the client pick their counsel, not the other way around. In February, Guardian Australia reported that Porter, who retired from politics, he didn't retire, he was voted out in the 2022 election, had created two new private companies, Henley Sterling Lawyers, Pty Ltd, and Henley Sterling Consultants, Pty Ltd, for life after politics. I will say this, he had a plan, right? He would re-enter the legal world. Just too bad he wasn't good at being Australia's lawyer. You know, making sure that those rorts and dodginess were kept at bay. You know, not too good at the whole lawyering thing. Just gonna put that out there. Oh, there is something I meant to put up there. Just one sec. Okay, so just glitched out. Okay, so This is going to be an important moment for what happens in his career. Porter declared that he was the sole director of both businesses to conduct a legal practice after the election and pursue possible future writing ventures. In other words, what ends up happening is that when their failed careers of politicians end up in a ball of smoke, they generally write a book that no one wants to read, and everyone's like, why are you writing a book when you couldn't even do your job properly? It's a little weird, right? And I mean, the only thing we want to hear is why you didn't stop the rorts and the craziness that was in government. This is what becomes the part where the 30,000 feet view becomes very important. So if Christian Porter wants to write a book about his life out of politics, I'm all for that. No one will probably read it. If he wants to set up and be Mick Gatto's lawyer, do that. But don't ever enter the world of politics again where you were terrible as Australia's lawyer. This is such a bad idea. I understand that there is a constitutional rule around this where you cannot reject a client. But really, the very criminal acting LNP has this very shady dude just happened to know the LNP. Just happened. See, that's rather convenient, don't you think? Just as he starts up his firm, Mick Gatto comes out and goes, I need a lawyer. Dude, Mick Gatto needed a lawyer. He needed the former Australian Attorney General to be his lawyer. Yeah, it's amazing how the standard person cannot get hold of someone like Christian Porter. But if you're part of the underworld and you're a good mobster, you can definitely get yourself a good lawyer. Well, a supposed good lawyer. My word is that he wasn't good as Australia's lawyer. Let's hope Mick Gatto gets a good lawyer. There are other lawyers that he has on the representing him, but we will see how this pans out. I am very interested in how the underworld pans out because in Victoria, don't know if you remember this, but the Liberal Party opposition has an amazing link to the underworld mafia. It's not hidden. They've never hidden it. And I don't assume that they're going to stop. Because if they were, they kind of would have done that. That's why they have a thing about calling Matthew Guy Lobster Man. Just a little remembrance there. Look, Victoria does have some shady history with this stuff. Unless you've followed closely as to why this is such a terrible idea. I think his life after politics is the same as his life in politics, with shady people doing shady things that he probably shouldn't be shady on. And I mean, he's so great at litigating people. Let me put this to him. Christian Porter, you have a choice now. You can revamp your life as a lawyer and get a bit of class. And you can write that book. And you can tell us why you failed as Australia's Attorney General. You can do those things. But let me tell you this as, a voter. Don't ever enter this world ever again. Your name is forever mud for being linked to the party and now this and everything else. The whole attacking the ABC was piss poor, buddy. Sorry, just was. All right. So next I want to talk about a expenses thing. So I don't know if you've heard of this guy. A bit of a troll actually on Facebook and stuff. I've had issues with these sorts of people. So check out this guy and tell me what you think. Oh, okay, here we go. Okay, so Sam McHennon is in the NT Nationals. So his travel expenses look a little bit funny. Now, B was good enough to have a look at it. I've never before seen any senator claim 186 nights or $74,635 in travel allowance. This is more than the prime ministers and ministers. I think it warrants a further investigation. How did he accrue this? There's so much to this. Now, even if, right, you take the 30,000 feet view and they say, oh, you just got to pay it back. No, there needs to be a bigger punishment for stuff like this. If we've, God forbid, claimed something on our tax that we weren't supposed to, there's possible jailing for that. I don't think people quite realise the amount of crazy that's involved in doing that. Somehow politicians claim everything, and whenever they can make the taxpayer pay for, they do. It's weird that they get these really high salaries and they're like, no, you should pay more. It's so weird, and I never know what to do with it. So let's have a look and see what ICAC would do with something like this. I think it needs definite investigation, but we will see. So there's that. So another one I want to talk about is Albo's payment return. Okay. So they're really not appearing the way I wanted them to today. So as we know that COVID isn't over. And I want to stress how serious it is that it's not over. We're going to talk about where we are nationally after we're done here. But I think it's important because we've been living under this interpretation of, well, are we or aren't we done kind of thing. And this is now what's going to happen in relation to that. And I really, really think that it's important for you to hear how this thing will roll out. Okay. Yeah, I really, really think that this is going to be an important issue for what's happening.
What is particularly unique and different about BA4 and BA5 is that they are very good at evading people's immunity. There are almost 10,000 points of primary care, pharmacies and GP surgeries where you can go and get this fourth dose.
Okay, so that's going to be what ends up happening with this. I'm really, really disturbed by the idea that they can have this view that with the COVID payments needing to be reinstated, where we're at, they're sort of making it sound as if he did this massive backflip, and for people that are working and needing to take isolation. Look, we're not done with this, not by a long shot. COVID is still here. And if you weren't sure about where we're at with COVID, I assure you, we're still in the middle of it. Okay, so total cases. We're at 8. So we've got over 10,000 deaths. Active cases 316,574. The ICUs is something that we're going to have to look at, and we're going to have to deal in this stuff. And the government is now acting appropriately. COVID is still here. So if you're feeling like COVID is like on the back burner and it's not really being dealt with, it's not. And having those payments restored, $750 for people that are working, that sort of thing, that's helpful. And never should have gone away, because this isn't a disease that you want to keep spreading on this massive scale. But it's quite disturbing to have a look at just how insane it has gotten. So I'm going to zoom in a little so you can get a good indication of this. So in New South Wales, as of the 13th of July, they had 61 people in an ICU. They had in Queensland 40. Like, we're at such high numbers that this is unsustainable to our healthcare. So I think it's entirely needed that we deal with this. This is not going away anytime soon. So if you thought we were out of it, we're not. And by all indications, we are still in this, and in this for the big run. So do not think we are done here, because we're not. So I want to talk about what's coming up in the Victorian election. What we're talking about now is something that I think will be the game changer. The LNP are trying to do the, hey, I can do the right thing, right? But we all know that it's a posture, and it's a posture that they pretend to be right on cue with. Victoria does have some very progressive ideas. And in this one, I think that the LNP were right to start talking about it, but I don't want to just hear them say that they're going to do it. I want to see policy, but yeah, we'll have to see where it goes. The Victorian opposition would have emissions by halve emissions by 2030 and legislate the reduction target and a new climate policy to strengthen the coalition's credentials on the environment before the November election. That part's important, because in non-election cycles, they're like, no, the climate crisis isn't real. That is entirely where we're at with this mob. They think that we haven't noticed that out of election cycles, the climate crisis doesn't exist. Now, for those of us who have paid heavy attention to every word that comes out of their mouth, it's total BS. They do not have any credibility on this at all. Opposition leader Matthew Guy on Saturday, lobster man, like we spoke about before, Mick Gatto and the underworld that they seem to have a lot of ties with, mobsters, Christian Porter and all the like, will announce a target which, in line with the state Labor, but more ambitious than the federal government, having previously signed off on a net zero by 2050. See, this is because the LNP realised that this is a big deal. So why would they do this? Because they want the votes, and they're trying to garner votes from Labor. Labor that actually will do something and not just lip service. See, that's the distinction here. And I think that they're looking at the federal election and they say, yeah, okay, kind of might have blown the gasket on this one. My thought is basically I want to be a little bit PC about it, because I don't know, it's the most shittest idea I've ever heard, that their lip service will somehow get them over the line. Their voting record speaks volume. The Andrews government already has a 50% emissions reduction target by 2030. But its interim target has not been legislated. Shadow spokesman for Climate and Environment, James Newbury, said the writing in the target of the law could help drive investment in renewables. The Victoria Liberals and Nationals are serious about climate change and have a sensible plan to achieve a net zero based on real solutions, not ideology, Newbury said. Kane Thornton, Chief Executive of Clean Energy Council, said in an interim target of 50% was a good step forward, but would ultimately need to be strengthened over time. It's certainly pointing in the right direction, Thornton said. We expect 50% by 2030, and these are the targets that we think we can be dialed up and be honest in years to come. Thornton agreed legislating the interim target would provide certainty and encourage investment in renewable projects such as wind and solar farms. Now, you have to remember that Andrews is very popular as a government. So not only is he popular, but here's the French kiss moment for me. To watch him still romp around and go, no, I'm not putting up with that. Sorry. He's owned the media and told them, particularly Rachel Baxter, that he's always like, nah, I'm just going to ask you a really pestering question out of nowhere and won't have anything to do with the job that you're talking about today. Particularly during COVID, she had this like really hateful rhetoric going on with him. It wasn't about journalism, it was about gotcha. And Dean Andrews has gone, I'm not putting up with it. The coalition would also fund the $1 billion strategy to support clean hydrogen. If elected, the package would not explicitly rule out hydrogen that's produced with coal. See, that's where they get funny. See, and then they're like, you got to keep the coal lobby in line with them. Where Dean Andrews is saying, no, we're so far from this. We have two different deals going on here. And that's where it always gets tricky. Sunday's announcement will include a commitment to upgrade the transmission infrastructure in Western Victoria, a task force to fix the state's power grid, and a recommitment of the local gas supply guarantee. Why is there a pokies thing there? A supply guarantee would ensure that residents were offered onshore gas extracted from Victoria first, cheapening gas bills. That needs to happen nationwide, if you ask me. If you're going to make something like that, I think the federal government needs to legislate. No more of this selling it overseas to cheaper than what we get it and depleting the supplies before the Australians can get to it. Screw that. John Howard, you sucker. Why screw over the Australian public? It was his little bright spark idea to do that one. The announcement comes after the opposition promised rebates for both solar panels and home batteries of up to $44,000 for homeowner occupied and $88,000 for rentals, expanding the Andrews government package, a move welcomed by the Environment of Victoria. Now, rentals is super important because homeowners, they will see the benefit of that, but rentals, that's where the real thing happens. Because people aren't renting because they want to rent, they're renting because they can't get a house. Now, like I said at the beginning, I'm looking for a new house in my area in Queensland, and it is hard. I do not have the money that they want to spend on rent. I just don't. And to add power and water and gas on top of that, no, I'm blown out of the water. It's too much. Okay, the Liberal Party was wiped out in Victoria in the May federal election, driven in the party's so-called teal independence, campaigning on climate and integrity. State seats in inner Melbourne, including Newbury's electorate of Brighton, could be targeted by candidates running on a similar platform. The Andrews government argues the opposition has a long history of blocking climate action, which it does, and taking down renewables as recently as May this year. The Victorian Liberals and Nationals have argued renewables were not necessarily less harmful to the environment in every instance. See, Dean Andrews just says it like it is, and it needs to be said. Tourism Minister Steve Dimopoulos but I'm sure I butchered that, on Saturday, said that there was no way Victorians could take the coalition seriously on climate change. True that. I've got to say that there is no way that the Victorian community will believe that the Liberal opposition in Victoria is in any way serious about climate change. Take that federally too. I'm of the same opinion. They have spent the last 8 years fighting against every measure uh, that they've tried to make. 5 minutes to midnight, they want to make a promise about the investment. Okay, the coalition in March confirmed that it supported the net zero by 2050, causing some confusion among the opposition at the time, but left the interim target uncertain until now. Net zero reduction by 2020 has been legislated in Victoria already. So their promise has already been legislated, but they get to say, well, we're going to be a part of this too. But they didn't vote for it when it was up. So that's a little weird. But this is where we are with these people, and it's a repugnant thought that we still have to deal with them. So our next story, I am racing through it tonight. Okay, so what happens when with Scott Morrison now? Now, I thought when I seen him, I thought, this can't be good. So, his own electorate right now is going through a bit of a crisis. Homes are receding from some of the beaches and that sort of thing in the Cedar Cook. So that's where he should be. But guess where he is? Well, he has to go to a hate conference because that's what he does. Scott Morrison high-fives children and joins worshippers at the Perth church run by hateful Margaret Court. The homophobe, the terrible woman who said terrible things, that's where he should be, right? Not helping the seat that he's elected to help. Oh, no, bugger that. Let's just go to a hate convention. And that's all she's pure hate, vitriol. Scott Morrison high-fived children, joined worshippers in song and dance, and declared he still believes in miracles. Ha 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 ha! No, you believe in rorts. And you believe in making polling stations not available, and you're still lost. Oh, and it wasn't a miracle. It was a newspaper, big, giant media outlet, helping you every step of the way in 2019. Oh, and you can fool us some of the time, but not all of the time. Good luck in your life after this is done. In the wake of his wipeout election loss at Perth church run by controversial tennis legend Margaret Court, in his first visit to WA since the election defeat in May, the former Prime Minister attended the celebratory event to mark the 27th birthday of Miss Court's Pentecostal Victory Life Centre Church opens in its Perth Prayer Tower. Because this is what you should be doing. After several songs of worship, Mr. Morrison was seen high-fiving young children, shaking hands and members of the congregation. Taking the stage as a guest speaker, Mr. Morrison said he wanted to thank Christians all around the country for their prayers for him and his wife Jenny and their family over the years in public life. We've been deeply grateful where we went around the country and I would find people and they would come up to me and say, we're praying for you, and I keep doing it. He said, Margaret has done that over so many years. Mr. Morrison later questioned, do you believe that all things work together for good and those who love Jesus? Do you believe that if you lose an election that God still loves you and has a plan for you? I do, he said. I still believe in miracles. God has secured it, your future, all of it. Yeah, even that bit. So he has to get all like preachy, which is weird. I wouldn't put it past him to, open up his own little Pentecostal church where he can, take in all of this stuff and his QAnon fans can join him do it. Mr. Morrison also congratulated WA professional player Matt Ebden, who was in the crowd and had taken the stage earlier for this men's doubles win at Wimbledon last week. How good was it? How good it, Matt Ebden, he said. It was so exciting. I was following it on Facebook, mate, and I was pleased to see you get up there. And will be much more of that, I'm sure. I didn't see him doing that for Ash Barty or anything. It's understood Mr. Morrison invited some of the closest WA political allies to attend the event. Former WA Premier Richard Court, the brother of Mrs. Court's husband, fellow legend Barry Court in attendance on Sunday morning. Liberal MP Peter Collier and former politician Vince Collery was also seen in the crowd. Mr. Court on stage alongside Mrs. Court and told the congregation that a week ago today she will be in the Royal Box at Wimbledon. We walked through the crowd and we knew very few people. We hadn't been there for 10 years, he said. But we come here today and we know everybody, and you're all a strong group of Christians together. So the great honour to have you all here. Mr. Court then invited Ebden, who won the men's doubles last weekend, to address the attendees. I don't know what I'm doing up here. I'm just a tennis player out there somewhere, he said. It's great to be back. Somehow I won Wimbledon only one time, not 40 times like you. I try like I'm doing my best, and yeah, lots of miracles happen, and somehow I got a trophy. I'm blessed. Thank you for everything you do for me and the church and everybody. Ahead of his appearance in the West, Mr. Morrison told West Australian he was attending the event by invitation in private capacity. During the service, Mrs. Court's daughter took the stage to wish her a happy birthday before the video birthday wishes of pastors around the world to be shown. Yeah, because any pastor that sent her some sort of magical happy birthday, they're just as hateful as her. Okay. The tennis great had been a long-time supporter of Mr. Morrison. Because, of course, it's how they run these things. She defeated the former PM criticisms over his decision to go to a family holiday to Hawaii during the New South Wales bushfires. Of course, she defended it. In the lead up to the May poll, she made an appearance at a number of pre-election events alongside her husband and former WA Liberal President Barry Court. This is what I mean. The seat of Cook desperately could use Scott Morrison. Desperately. You know, he could do any number of things. But instead of being there and being the good public servant that he's paid to be, he'd rather show up to a hate fest. And in February, she prayed for Mr. Morrison to be re-elected as Prime Minister via the church's social media platform. So much for separation of church and state, hey? That really showed that. I'd like for us to stand together and pray for our Prime Minister. These uncertain times that the election is coming up. He's a strong Christian and a family man. He has good values and morals. None of those things are true. He loves our nation. Not true. And I thank you, Father, that Mr. Morrison be re-elected in 2022. He has a favour and influence on his life and takes a nation through uncharted times. Oh, jeez, it's so terrible that it's so gross. I'm so grossed out by the whole thing that they do this. It's... Here you go. Mrs. Court's endorsement for the former Liberal PM came after Victory Life Centre received no less than $365,000 in taxpayer dollars in 12 months to June 2021, the last full financial year of Scott Morrison's prime ministership. Yeah, I can't see why she wouldn't be like, hey, this is great. You know, that's who these people are. They are scammy and terrible people. So there's that, and that's what ScoMo is doing now. Thank God he is not our PM. So I've come across this video and I thought you should see it. Okay, so this explains basically how things are going in England.
I have to tell you, it's a bit of a cheek having a program asking trade unions being greedy for asking for a pay rise. The FTSE 350 top companies in this country, profits have gone up 73% since 2019. When are we going to ask, are they being greedy? What about the railway companies that have been ripping this country off for years?
The point is,
no one asks about their profits or whether they're greedy.
You're going on strike, and it's going to impact
We're going on
everyday
strike.
people going to work. It's at
That's
the start
right.
of Commonwealth Games. That's going to.
No, it's not at the start of the Commonwealth Games.
At its height.
It's not at the start of the Commonwealth Games. We didn't strike on the Commonwealth Games. It's the day before.
The day before it starts.
The day before is not the Commonwealth Games.
As it's starting, you've got people travelling.
It starts the day after. They'll be travelling on the day too.
To Birmingham for the Games, it's going to impact them.
People will find it hard on a strike day, but people will find it hard when it's not a strike day, because there's people in this country spending 18% of their income travelling on trains. We've got the highest fares in Europe because profiteers have been robbing this country blind for years. At the same time, later on in this year, energy prices are going to be so high. Some of my people will be spending 2 full months of take-home pay on energy. And you're telling us that we're greedy for expecting workers to keep up with that. What we need in this country is a cost of living crisis addressed through the wage packet, and we need price caps on energy, and we need the profits taken down a peg or two. Because the people at the top of the economy, they're having a disco, and everyone else is being told that they've got to carry the can and tighten their belts. It's not on.
I think that says perfectly where we're at. That's perfectly where we're at. That's the World Economics explained in about 30 seconds. The top tier is saying, hey, you know what? Gas is a bit expensive. You pay that. Okay, petrol's a bit expensive. You pay that. Oh, and food's a bit expensive. You'll pay that. Wages. Wait. If you're asking for a decent wage, you can't do that. Oh, and rents are going up. Everything's going up. But if you need a cost of living addressed in your home, can't ask that. Poverty is rising and the rich are getting richer. But the middle class and the lower incomes just aren't cutting through. It's just not. And there's a lot of money to be made out of a recession. And that's what they're hoping on. They're hoping for the poverty to be dipping even lower. And that's where we're at. And I'm so disgusted by this whole thing. I just want to stress how terrible that is. But I'm not done there with the British moment. So here's one that I think you should hear too. Okay.
Bloody Boris. What's so extraordinary is he doesn't see that he's been exactly the same as Trump. He won't go away. Nobody wants him, even if you're a Tory, God help you. I don't get it. I keep thinking, what would his mother say? You know, when I do something naughty, and I have done naughty things, not wicked things, but naughty things, I think, what would Mummy say? She would be horrified, because she's a lady. You know, and I never made it to a lady. Just an old dyke, I'm afraid.
That's Britain is in serious trouble. There's no doubt about it. And I think that's another sign that, you know, things aren't going as they sort of think that it should. And I think with Boris Johnson gone from the world stage, no matter who they plan to replace these people with, they're just a revolving door of one terrible Conservative after the other. I have difficulty understanding how they got to this level of dumbing down the nation, where everything costs you a fortune. No one wants to pay you appropriately if you're on the lower end of the scale. And the rich keep telling you, Why do you need help? That doesn't make sense. See, meanwhile, their profits are up massive. They don't even pay the appropriate tax. And I think that's the issue everyone's having. They're not even attempting to do the right thing. And that's where we're at. But it's not just England, Australia, and America that have got leadership issues. Italy seems to have its own. The Italian Prime Minister Mario to resign after coalition partner snub. The Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi has said that he will resign after five-star movement. In other words, Conservative loses after cost of living becomes part of the issue. And here's the thing, this isn't just our country, it's not just America, it's not just Britain. There is a whole EU battling this. And these countries done nothing to help no one. And they had all these conservatives going, this one was an anti-establishment one going, oh, I can be your fixture. I will fix this for you. I've got this. Newsflash. They didn't have it. They still don't have it. I am waiting for a bold moment for someone to say, hey, these companies aren't paying the right amount of tax. Let's start dealing with that. Oh, and social welfare programs, let's increase that funding. Oh, and let's build more houses for renters. And create this moment where they're not just being ripped off blind, and settle the market down for a little bit. So it's not just insane right now. So this is going to be an interesting moment for Italy and the world. Cost of living is killing everyone. And we don't know what this is going to hold out to be. But I can tell you this, it doesn't look great. So there's that. I want to talk about, as my final story, this. Now, this is why I wanted it to be the final story. One, because it's not Australian, and two, because if there is a hell, you're an American. That's basically where I'm going with this. If you have ever felt that hell is real, I'm going to tell you that you have to be an American to experience it at this point. Texas sues Biden over new abortion guidance as conservative groups mull over more challenges. The suit targets a Monday memo in which the government warned health workers in hospitals that refusing to treat patients who need an abortion could put them in legal jeopardy. The Texas Attorney General filed a lawsuit challenging the new abortion guidance the Biden administration released this week, arguing that it violates the right of doctors to not participate in terminating a pregnancy and steps on the rights to regulate the procedure within its borders. No. We're talking about life-saving procedures. We're not talking about willy-nilly, I just need it. But even if you did, it's not your business. And doctors, if you're silly enough to force a woman to give birth, dude, that's so bad. I need you to think about that for a sec. You're telling people what to do with their bodies. That's grotesque on the worst level. Bro, you got to think that one through. The suit against the Biden administration's top health officials targets one of the two main actions federal government has taken in response to the fall of Roe v. Wade. In a memo to hospitals and doctors across the country Monday, arguing that the federal law requires them to provide abortions in emergency circumstances, regardless of what ban on the state imposes. In other words, hey, if this is going to kill a woman, you should probably do that. No, you should do that. And that's what Biden is saying. He's saying her right to life should not exceed the right of a few cells that could potentially be a baby, like in the case of an ectopic pregnancy. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's where a baby is conceived in the fallopian tube. This is life-threatening. This is one of many cases where this can be an actual thing. And hey, do you know that Christians have had to do this before? Because it would have killed them. So now they're not going to be able to do that. And that's where we're at. Okay, in the lawsuit, Texas claims a new guidance forces hospitals and doctors to commit crimes and risk their license under Texas law. While Texas is the first to sue over the new guidance, the state is likely that it won't be the last. Conservative advocates tell Politico that they are mulling over their own challenges because hate needs to vibe off this. Because any moment that you give a woman the right to choose, no, the big male, big wig club can't handle that crap. Here's the thing though. You really want to do this? You really want to be stupid to do that when 50% of the population is women? No, forget politics for a minute. Think about it as a human person. Your wife, your sister, your mother, your daughter, someone. There will be someone that will need this. Suing the Biden administration because he said if a woman needs this procedure, you should have to provide it. The very fact that Texas thinks that this is the living moment that they need, look, Texas has a lot of problems right now. It's dealing with school shootings and a whole bunch of other things. But here's where I want to just quickly warn you. The world is watching Texas. So if you're going to be dumb enough to tell people that, hey, even in a medical emergency, you don't think that that should be done, I'm here to tell you, you're nuts. That's insane. There is not a good reason for that. Women deserve the right to be safe. I don't know how many lives is enough for you, but clearly the pandemic showed no life is enough for you to take political capital on. No school shooting is enough for you to go, okay, we need to do something about that. So you're pretty much up the creek without a paddle at this point, America. If you really, really want the world to hate you, go ahead. Make this the hill you die on. Because I will never understand the stupidity that comes from something like this. This has no world place ever. Now, I'm certain that there are countries that have better values than this. The fact that you have put yourself as this great light on the hill of the muse that everyone should follow, this idea that your country should be what everyone should strive to be. Hell no. Hell no. Margaret Atwood did not write The Handmaid's Tale for you to take it as a blueprint. Let me tell you, conservatives, it's not just bad that you thought this was going to fly. It is the worst idea that you've ever humanly had. And I tell you, when women are mad, they come with plans. What's your plan for that one? See, here's the deal. Conservatives aren't popular. They can't win on super popular things. Wade versus Roe were very popular with people, even with conservatives. How do you think that's going to go down in November? Just spitballing it out there, idiots. Was there a point that you're like, hey, this is a great idea? I don't know. But this is political suicide. It has to be. It's a democracy fail. While I'm dealing with a whole bunch of contentious issues with the United States and how they really don't value life, I think this is the time to say conservatives don't value life. They never did. Otherwise, guns would be regulated properly. They would have taken the pandemic seriously. Oh, and women would be treated like humans and not just a carrier for your cells. Utterly repugnant to the core. Now you got your shit show of a plan. Let's see how that one plays out in November. Oh, and gerrymandering. Yeah, you know, the thing that you keep doing to make it harder for people to vote. I suspect even that will fail. This whole thing of shouldn't vote by mail, trying to tell people President Trump won, this whole thing will blow up in your face. This isn't it. This isn't over. We are not done, not by a long shot. Women have a way. The political capital that you think you're gaining with a very small minority, it's stupid. This is the stupidest thing you've ever done. And God help you if you ever come to my country and ever think that you're doing one of these swapping of forums of conservative values. If you come here and make our lot just as lunatic-y, I swear to God, I will make it my mission, Greg Abbott, you stupid, stupid governor, to come after you personally at any moment. That would be stupid. That's political suicide in this country. Because our politicians cannot do that. There is a thing called a monarchy. And I'm thinking it was pretty stupid for you to secede from the Queen now. Because if you still had that, you couldn't pull stunts like this, I would imagine. I'm not sure. But countries like mine look at you in a bit of, oh, that's horrible. Look, this isn't something I want to be talking about. No one wants to talk about what happens in a dystopian time. But I think it's time that we address that this is quite dystopian. And they've really lost any credibility of what they claim to be. You know, this loving families, loving people group. And I really want to stress that ordinarily what America does doesn't faze me at all. Doesn't. But when your idiots create our idiots, like free the mask movements and anti-vaxxers and flat earthers, when your idiots create our idiots, I think it's time someone said, no, sorry, that's not acceptable. But anyway, I think that puts us at the end of our show. I want to thank everyone who could join me tonight and anyone who watches the replay. Please like, share and subscribe, and I hope you love the brand new intro. Just so we're clear, normally things do settle down. There is a settle down period once we get a leftist government. And I think this is what this is. It's the lull after the massive hair on fire of conservative values that are not very good at all. Alright, thank you guys. Have a lovely night. See you next week.